teaching of Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way. So we're now into like, I think the 11th chapter, or so. It depends on which book we're looking at. It's number 25 in the text that we're following along in terms of the chapter number at the top, the resultant ground. When we look at the, when we look at the illuminating the intent, it's number 25 where we are in terms of the outline. So each of those chapters of the Omagombarapsel are numbered. And we see number 25 as the resultant ground, and that's where we've arrived at. It's stanza number 10, chapter 11. So we went over the excellent qualities already of the different grounds, and now we're going to get into the excellent qualities of what happens from those grounds, and that's the resultant body, the Buddha, the resultant, which is the Buddha. The body is the emanation body, and so forth, and how the Buddha abides, and how, and so forth, and helps all sentient beings through emanating. So we're going to get into all of those qualities, but before we get started, it's important to set our motivation properly. So instead of just kind of reading through all of these introductory prayers, just to kind of get them out of the way, in order to move on with the explanation of the teaching, we need to really look at that motivation and see that when we look at the Lamrim teachings, it says that if we don't get the beginning part of it right, if we don't have the motivation right, the rest of the teaching isn't going to go properly. So if we just take these introductory kind of prayers as just a ritual, and we're not looking at what their meaning is, and we're not setting our motivation to actually say these prayers so that we can meditate on their meaning, so that we can become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. So that should be the reason that from the minute that we start this process that we're here, we should be really meditating on first the fact that we have suffering, and that we have unfavorable conditions, and that all sentient beings also have those same unfavorable conditions. The only way to get rid of those unfavorable conditions is to become a Buddha. And how nice it would be if I could become a Buddha so that I could help all sentient beings to get rid of all those unfavorable conditions. So that's the reason that we're attending this teaching. And the only way to become a Buddha is to get rid of the grasping at true establishment, and to get rid of the self-cherishing attitude, and have a desire to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And the Heart Sutra takes us through, when we look at it as the Mahayana text that it is, it takes us through all of the stages of the Bodhisattva path, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And all of those stages of the path, beginning with the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and ending when we look from the accumulation to no more learning, with the final imprint of the affliction at its smallest level, and the others just being immediately abandoned, and then one no longer has any of the afflictions or obstructions to omniscience, and then becomes a Buddha. So this text takes us through the Bodhisattva grounds when we read it, and kind of before, and lets us see that process that has to take place of the accumulation of merit, and this union of method and wisdom, the union of this bodhicitta, and all this effort with the wisdom realizing emptiness, and this uniting force. And if you look at it in a little bit longer sense, the three principal paths: renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom realizing emptiness. So we realize we're sick, right? We realize that we have a predicament that we're in, and we will continue to be in if we don't practice. And then we recognize that all sentient beings also have that predicament that they are in. And the only way to get out of the predicament for any of us is to become a Buddha. And I can only really, at this point, if I want to be of ultimate service to all sentient beings without the handicap of not being omniscient, wish to become a Buddha as quickly as possible so I can truly help those beings who haven't quite figured out that it's the grasping at true establishment and the fact that we don't have renunciation and bodhicitta that is causing us to be reborn again and again and again. So we should set our motivation. I heard Professor Thurman recently say something awesome, that these sutras are guided meditations, right? So when we meditate on the Heart Sutra, when we hear these words, we may not know where the breakdown in the stages are, but we at least know that Teata Om Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasangati, Bodhisoha, in its condensed form, because we've heard this a million times, refers to the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And so we can look at this as however deeply as a practitioner we can. So there's commentaries which show us all the breakpoints in the Heart Sutra for each of those paths. But we can understand that the general intent of the Heart Sutra is the presentation of those paths. The path of accumulation of generating bodhicitta, the path of preparation where that bodhisattva then has a union of calm abiding and special insight that ends up with an inferential valid cognition of emptiness, that inferential valid cognition that has as its object of observation emptiness, reaches the last mundane state of cyclic existence, and then reaches the path of seeing by seeing emptiness directly, entering into a state of non-conceptual awareness of the direct valid perception of emptiness, then it goes through the path of release and then goes back, and now is a bodhisattva on the first bodhisattva ground, and then moves on to the path of meditation in order to move on through the bodhisattva grounds and to get rid of more and more of the obstructions to omniscience and the afflictions and so forth. So at the path of seeing, the coarse afflictions are abandoned, but there's still subtle afflictions and the afflictions that are imprints to the afflictions that are left over. So through the path of meditation and then to no more learning, the bodhisattva then is able to become enlightened through this process of lots and lots of time, lots and lots of effort, and lots of love and compassion for all sentient beings, and recognizing, though, that they themselves are empty, the love and compassion for those sentient beings is empty, and those sentient beings are empty, but that does not make it any less important or any less real. So the bodhisattva understands that conventionally, the sentient being's suffering is real, the love and compassion is real, and they are real. They are just not truly real in the way that one normally grasps at real. So this is the guided meditation that the Buddha is taking these followers through at Vulture Peak Mountain. The Buddha is not just saying, there's no this, there's no that, there's no this, there's no that. He's teaching to a scope of practitioners who at that time can understand those points going through that sutra. We require a commentary. A great commentary is Jayangapé Lodru's commentary, the first textbook writer for Drepung Losang Ling. Rinpoche used that commentary a lot to explain the Heart Sutra, and you see how the stages are very clear in the Heart Sutra when you utilize that text, and you see where the very clear breakpoints are, and in the different paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. So it's important that we set our motivations and really desire to become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings through the process of the Lama meditation that gets us to that point. So with that, let's start with the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature, form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala jube ne jodamba ne gushe dojo ngai dodo Chenrezig Lama yi bushin zi ne zongandro sola shaselo agasamara tajana razumara. Agasamara tajana razumara yame de ada onga de gade baraga de barazanga de vadizo papa kanje sanji gai tembe doje che shava doje mepo doje shava doje jagi paje metam bejo tanje shetin kaye so gere no jaje jo je wada medon be den da wada do ba jonji bonjon zonjoji kashi de jan den da de le yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Vedam Guru Ranamandala Radayami. Nijadan Gari Janam La Janjo Badu Dani Jasu Dagi Jinye Jipe Zananje Jala Menje Zanje Jubajo Jadan Gari Janam La Janjo Badu Dani Jasu Dagi Jinye Jipe Zananje Jala Menje Zanje Jubajo Sanye Jadan Ye Jana La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Chinye Jibe Sunan Ji Drula Benji Sanye Jubayo. Okay, so we're on chapter 11, stanza number 10, where we're going to start. And just give me one moment here. Okay. Okay.
Hoşuna katırma bakındana şala cübişir önce tuğcu cübü sala çöcü hayvan becücü omi dönde kağıt döndü becürü komon çuşava yedi tada tatu somba me çöcü dedim ya iyi kala ya me tar ne ya gaya la işi rüyayı duyanda tuzu çubuğa 제주나 제동 취지 계획에 시제 단지 투지 컨셉 시와들이 이나들라 노조 조건으로 도마슈가 시제에 이제 내봐 리본 마일라 그네 심에 안에 시바 제대로 유대 교주로 세번 해봐 최제 제일란데 다보 시에서 수지되어서 가스쯤에 되니 이제 로양 저와 당저와 있었잖아. 대배 대래 뒤 이제 그거부터 제대로 세네 가기 나봐 제도 요디 유 요소 요소 시버들이 다 네 영화 때네 시버이 대롱시 두고 수나지 세다 줄라 가지 레디트 자간 취지 니 되죠 리미데 이제 제자 제대로 작게 도지 데베데 요리 제베 배고를 걸었네 이 주드 그래서 저 매번 신도 코시 토발아서 저 교통 따라 대신 대신 최종 매진도 취지 대자 군일라슈 티 어지고 그런 플라즈 제발 제발 레지 삼자 시비시 컴보 말로바 시비시데 제나 취주고 추고데 저와 매진 가매바 생각에도 그 무슨 쉬고 와서 신들 세주신 이메고 다음에 이네 제가 이 뭐도 르르 받으시네 열렸다 되는 주다 저와 아주 통화 뒤지 코너디 요티 르 누구 찔러 이렇게 제가 안에 전에 그 알아 무슨 맞출 맞출로 주는 말로 지금 타다 저 번째 서지 시대 제대로 통화돼 제가 그수 저도 전자와 예수 이제 지저다와 샤슈 세나 저도 전자와 이제 최다 제가 전자와 전자다 이제 저도가 라피와 됐는 말로 굳이 라던제 대신 수비 저저된다 새로 쉬데 빠지 내가 가 마찬 매드다 쉐바그 그 바비 콤보 공부 세웠죠. 사제 가자.
Okay, we're going to go to, so we started at 23. Okay, so just give me one moment just to double back here. So basically the stanzas that we went over prior to this, just before this in the 11th chapter, dealt with the excellent ground qualities. So the excellent quality of the first, second, third, fourth, etc., all of the grounds. Now we get into, okay, those grounds create something, and that is the Buddha, right? So the Buddha, then what are the qualities of the Buddha? You know, what does the Buddha have? So it gets into how the Buddha is able to perceive conventional and ultimate reality simultaneously, is able to know all phenomena from a conventional and ultimate level simultaneously, how the Buddha abides in the Dharmakaya, and then the Dharmakaya has these various divisions, and how the accumulation of merit and all of this compassion then creates these bodies, such as the enjoyment body, that then create the emanation body, that then create even emanations of sounds that allow some beings to hear emptiness, that allow whatever is needed to emanate really in order to present the truth to sentient beings. So you find all of these examples in the great commentaries of the way that Buddhas can actually help sentient beings. And then when we look in the Lamrim Chemo, we find the excellent qualities of Buddha's body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. So you see how all of these texts kind of form this kind of continuous line that all is really necessary to have in order to see this continuous line, in order to see where all of these things kind of fit into place and why they are where they are. So we find these excellent qualities of the Buddha, and then we look at the excellent qualities of the Dharma and the excellent qualities of the Sangha, and then we're inspired. We feel that we have a way out. We feel that there is a being who is just like us, who is able to overcome the various sufferings that we have to endure, and how in the case of the historical Buddhist, but we have many records of course, Tara, who take the initiation of every month, is a female Buddha. So we say he in the historical Buddha because we're speaking of Shakyamuni. And Shakyamuni was a fully ordained monk. So therefore he was a human. And because you have to be a human in order to take the individual liberation vow. So we say that teacher who was like us and was able to discover that he had these kind of circumstances that we have, and figure out how to get rid of those unwanted circumstances that we have, and showed us exactly how to do that. And then what was the result of having done that? So that inspires us. So that's what allows us to eventually have the perfection of effort. That's what makes us want to practice. That's what gives us effort. So we want to just skip to the 6 perfections. But how do we get to the 6 perfections? We get there by understanding what these qualities are that we can then eventually obtain. And then why do we want these qualities? What is it that we are lacking? So when we start to think about suffering, it's very easy to just say, life has its ups and downs. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's difficult. And then we are always abiding in, I remember that difficult time, or this time is difficult, or wow, that's going to be hard later. But we don't understand that all of it is difficult, that every moment we're abiding, when we're abiding in the most, the greatest happiness, we get that brand new car that we just always wanted. When it starts to fall apart, we start to crave that quality that it no longer has. So within it, that self-destruct mechanism is already there the moment that we purchased it. The moment that we purchased it, the highest point of our anticipation and the greatest joy is already going to start to flee. So it's within it. The suffering of change is built into every form of happiness that we have, no matter what form we look at, no matter what desirable condition that we've had or have. We can see how that condition turns into some form of suffering. Either we have to be torn away from it, it has to be torn away from us, or in some way it becomes something that we didn't expect it to become, and it's not what we thought. So we have this suffering of change that takes place. So we're constantly having to engage in suffering through every stage of our life. When we look at the suffering of birth, we look at the suffering of aging, we look at the suffering of sickness, we look at the suffering of death. We look at the suffering of meeting with what we don't want to meet with, those unpleasant enemies and horrible circumstances we have to meet with. We look at what being separated from what we really want, like the things that are pleasant, we have to be ripped away from. We have to suffer because we can't get what we want. And then we suffer because all of this goes on and on and on and on and on. All of these things go on and on beyond our control, the 8th suffering and the 8 types of suffering, meaning we're forced into these aggregates that this happens in: birth, aging, sickness, death, being separated from what you want, being being faced with what you don't want, not being able to get what you want. That occurs over and over and over again. And everything that we think is happiness is suffering and contaminated because we're looking at it through an improper lens. It's not saying that things aren't good. The smile of a child is bad. It's not saying that. It's saying that the way that we look at it is inherently this or that. The way that we look at our friends is inherently our friend and become attached to them. The way that we look at our enemies and as an inherent enemy and then have aversion and dislike for them. The way that we just discard neutrals and walk by them on the street and don't say, I would love to benefit them. We're not attached to them and we don't want to not benefit them because we don't like them. So we just kind of leave them neutral. So somehow we need to bring about this evolution of mind through mind training and through meditation to get to the point where we equally want to benefit all of those sentient beings. And the way that we arrive at that is through this progression of practices that allow us to first recognize our own plight. So Shanti Davis says, if we don't know our own circumstances, how could we even dream of someone else's, right? How are we even gonna like imagine someone else's? So first we get into reality about what our circumstances are, because if we just think life has ups and downs, that's not gonna throw us into the kind of Dharma practice that's necessary. We have to realize when things are like great, we're having a good time, that we need to practice just as hard then as when we're having a terrible situation. So we don't develop what's called like sugarcane renunciation, that we only do it when things are bad, you know, and then it's really hollow on the inside. Something terrible happens in life, we throw ourselves into practice, we pray, we meditate, we take refuge, and then things get really good. And then it's like, well, okay, well, that was just a tool for my hardship. And that's really missing the point altogether. This is a tool for the hardship of cyclic existence, getting out of that hardship. And it's the tool, it's only that tool. There are byproducts, says you'll be happier, you'll be peaceful, you'll have better relationships with your neighbors, all byproducts. Atisha's main point was throw away this life and understand what that means. That doesn't mean don't be a good parent, don't be this or that. Throw away this conception that this life is it, that this I, that this Jeff that I grasp at is the only one. Realize that we've had, as it says in the Lam Rim, I was just reading, if we added up all the bones, if they didn't just disintegrate that we've had, they'd be higher than any mountain we've ever seen. If we added up all the milk we drank, it would be more than all the oceans. Yet, if we don't practice, we're going to drink a lot more, for sure. That's one guarantee. If we don't get out of cyclic existence, we will fill more oceans. And if we drink milk, that means we've been born into suffering aggregates. If we've been born into suffering aggregates, then it means that we're going to have to move into other suffering aggregates. Depending on those aggregates, right? We have birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of change, pervasive compounded suffering. We have to endure all those things over and over and over again. So when we look at this high status stuff about the great qualities of the Buddha's emanation body and all of this, it's not just a kind of a, oh, that's really interesting material. This is a meditation on what we can become and what we're lacking. It says, you know, the Bodhisattvas cherish sentient beings, or the Buddhists, is it, and we don't. Look at the difference between the qualities of us and them, you know? So there's constantly a meditation where we're using the Dharma as a mirror to compare ourselves to a Bodhisattva, to compare ourselves to a Buddha. I believe it's the Buddhas cherish others. We cherish ourselves. Look at the difference. I believe that's the quote. So that's the point. Look at the difference. The Buddha can do all this. Can you do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want everyone you know to have to suffer? And everyone on that exists, every being has had the, imagine the closest relationship you have. Every sentient being you've had that kind of close connection with. Do you want them to have these horrible circumstances? Think about the closest person you've been with that had to suffer the most they've ever had to suffer. Maybe they passed on, maybe they didn't. Do you want anyone else to have to go through that? Do you want to go through that? And when you recognize is that death comes, nothing can stop it. We don't know when it's going to happen, and nothing can help but Dharma. That's when we throw ourselves into our practice, and it becomes really real. And it becomes less of an exercise in something interesting and more of like real, like life or death situation. Every moment we're alive, we're creating a circumstance to either have happiness or have that circumstance that I just talked about that we witnessed that was so unbearable and so awful. And just imagine that it could get worse than that because we're in the human realm. Just imagine the worst thing we've ever thought of or experienced is nothing compared to other sufferings and the length of time that those other sufferings will happen. So when we meditate on circumstances that we've been in and understand how hard that pain is, relate it to every sentient being and know that they will have to experience that same pain. And we've been as close to them as we were to that sentient being that experienced that pain. No less close to every ant you see, to every bird you see, every being you can't see. We've been no less close than we were to that person that we saw suffer. And their experience is no less intense, and it will hurt them no less, and it will hurt us no less to see again in the future. So this is why we're here, because the Buddha knows how to make that stop. The Buddha made it stop for himself. And because part of the process of making that stop is getting rid of the self-cherishing attitude and developing love and compassion for all sentient beings, the Buddha must help until we're all free. And that's why this information is here. That's why we have it, because of love, because of compassion. And that's why at the beginning of this text, Chandrakirti bows down to compassion. And thus, because the moon shines brightest in a clear, unclouded sky, again through striving on this ground, the 10 strengths nurturing, they reach their highest aim in akanishta, unsurpassed, the ultimate, unequaled qualities of peace. Vessels may be different, but their space is one and undivided. Just so, phenomena so many, but their suchness is beyond all multiplicity. And understanding perfectly their single taste, such beings in their perfect wisdom know all knowable objects in a single instant. So here's speaking of the omniscience of the Buddha, being able to see that all objects have one nature, lack of true establishment. So it's able to see that one single taste of all objects, understanding and understanding that in one instant. And the Buddha is able to do that as well as conventional reality. So all know all knowledge objects in a single instant. So conventionally and ultimately. But if you may object, the final nature of phenomena is peace. The mind can never know it. So now it's getting into, is it tenable for a knower to know the ultimate? Is it, then how does that then be transmitted to sentient beings? It gets into this big discussion that I'm nowhere near qualified to get into. This is my weakest area: bodies of the Buddha, creation of the bodies, enjoyment, but not not a strong area of mine. So hopefully I make prayers that it will become a strong area of mine. But if you, okay, so let's do this again. But if you may object, the final nature of phenomena is peace. The mind can never know it. Certainly you say when mind is not engaged, we cannot entertain the notion of knowing a subject. In total absence of knowing mind, what knowledge can there be? For it is thus negated. And if there is no knower, you will ask, who is it now who teaches others, saying it is thus? So it's saying if the Buddha is abiding in ultimate truth, who is there? You know, who's there to know it? When you look, when you look at the Gomba Rapso, you know, it gets into all of the points that I'm not going to, you know, get into again, because you all can, you know, get the text and read it yourselves and then, you know, studying into it. But that's the opponent's position right there, stanza number 12. So it says, you know, you say there is an absence of intrinsic arising, is the suchness of form and so on. But then you also assert that this is cognized by the mind. So now there's something that an opponent is saying, hey, well, you say this doesn't make any sense, right? How can there be? So now Chandrakirti is going to rebut it. It's going to say that suchness, the realization of suchness is tenable. He's going to say it's not untenable. So we'll get into that. And then it gets into that the knower would be untenable after that. So it gets to that. So let's just read it. Suchness is unborn, and the mind itself is also free from birth. And when the mind is tuned to this, it is as though it knows the ultimate reality. For since you say that consciousness cognizes when it takes the aspect of a thing, it's right for us to speak such a way. By the power of the Sambhokaya, gained through merit, and likewise of its emanations, ultimate reality is shown from space and sky elsewhere it resounds, and thus may be perceived by worldly folk. So here, this is talking about, it says the Buddha's form body, the embodiment in which the Buddha actualizes the Dharmakaya, which is sustained or created by accumulation of merit. It's the enjoyment body. So here it's talking about, you know, the enjoyment body itself. It says that sounds can reverberate from the body and declare the truth of ultimate reality of phenomena to spiritual trainees who are vessels. So there's certain beings who can be taught by this in this way. And it says that it can emanate in inanimate things like space, grass, trees, walls, cliffs, and it can reveal the truth of reality in some way. So the Buddha, somehow the Sambhokaya can reverberate through this collected merit, all of these things. And when a sturdy potter plies his wheel and labors long and hard to get it turning well, it later spins without his further work, and pots are seen to be produced therein. It is the same for those who dwell within the Dharmakaya. All exertion ends, yet through their special prayers and being's merit, deeds arise beyond imagining. So this is not something that's in control. This is spontaneous enjoyment body. It spontaneously arises because of the merit and so forth, because of the Bodhisattva grounds, right, where all of this merit was created and compassion and so forth. All the sentient beings' aims were thought about during that time. That's the predominant mind, is this desire to free them, right, and a mind that is free itself. Deeds arise beyond imagining, right? The tender, so there's not, like, Buddha doesn't have to be like, I think I'm going to go out today and help sentient beings. It just happens spontaneously. There isn't this like, let me see, like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. No, it's not like that. Spontaneously arises for all sentient beings. Now, the Buddha can't fix, right? Like, he can't wash away sins with water or move his hands and take away suffering. The Buddha teaches us how to become free. So the Buddha, there's no some special like magic that can happen. It's magical, that it can happen, right? That the Buddha can come and teach us and we can learn these things. But our active participation must take place. When we look at the details, looking at the Buddha like a doctor and the Dharma as medicine, right? And the practice is like, all that's great. We can go to the Buddha, we can hear what the medicine is, but if we don't take the medicine, we can't be cured, right? So there's this interactive process where we learn what we need to do from the holy beings. But if we don't do it, we just keep doing this in cyclic existence. We cannot listen to holy beings. You know, they wish we would, because they love us, they want us to not suffer. But it's really our choice if we take the medicine, right? The teacher can teach us the Lam Rinpoche, right? And say, this is the way out of suffering. This is the way out of the suffering of the lower realms, right? This is the way of the suffering out of cyclic existence. This is the way that you can become a Buddha, a Buddha, and get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. But if we don't participate and do the things that they say are necessary to have that happen, we're just getting imprints of the information. And we may not even be hearing it correctly if we aren't attending the teaching properly. We haven't studied the Lam Rim on how to hear a teaching, right? Like we talked about last week. We may not be hearing it properly. We could be corrupting it with our own mind. We may just be forgetting it. Or we may just come in and not hear any of it and think that we did, right? And then go to a coffee shop and tell everybody all about it, right? Or go tell someone else all about it, our neighbor, and not really know anything about it and have it totally corrupt and think now we're on some spiritual path, some progress that we're making, where we're not really doing anything, but maybe once a week or 3 times a month, listening to something, right? And then the thing we're listening to is very clear that it's interactive, that we have to practice it. There's nowhere that says, oh, just come here, you know, a little bit and it'll all be fine. It all says, if you look at the end of every chapter of the Lam Rinpoche, almost, it says, once you've realized that, sustain this meditation all the time. So it's saying like, okay, now you've realized death and impermanence. Keep meditating on death and impermanence. Now you're ready to meditate on this. So it never stops. It's this continuous cycle. That's why when we see Rinpoche, he doesn't, all day and night, he's got his flashlight out because he knows what it's going to take. It's not because, oh, he's, you know, really learned more. No, he's just learned it. He knows that's what it's going to take in order to get out of cyclic existence, or he's showing us that's what it's going to take to get out of cyclic existence. This is not a leisurely activity. This is not a movement that we shouldn't take seriously. If we've studied the first part of the Lam Rim thoroughly, it'll be a no-brainer. And I see that a lot of my flaws in my practice come from not investing enough time in the preliminary practices of the Lam Rim. Because I would be, if my house is on fire, like Nagarjuna says, like if your house is on fire and you're in the middle of a meditation, you wouldn't get up to get out of it. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of like single pointed focus on practice you would have. Now, obviously, you know, human life is precious. You wouldn't want to die. I get all of that. But the point is like meditate, you know, as if this is your last moment and what's going to happen at the time of death. Are you ready for that? And looking what it takes to get a human rebirth is very, very difficult. When you look at the life of leisure and opportunity, it takes some very specific circumstances to fulfill all those leisures and opportunities. It takes a really rooted practice of the ethics. You have to have it says, you know, very rooted in ethics, and also practice of the 6 perfections and generosity and so forth. And a stainless prayer to be able to have that happen, like stainless prayers, like aspirations. So in order to have all these fulfilled qualities, it's so difficult to obtain this chance we have, right? So we have this chance, we hopefully can take advantage of it, because if we don't, then we won't won't have any opportunity necessarily for a very long time to do it again. So let me just let me read now. The tinder of phenomena is all consumed, and this is peace. The Dharmakaya of the conquerors. There is no origin, no cessation. The mind is stopped. The kaya manifests. This peaceful kaya, radiant like the wish-fulfilling jewel, is like the wishing jewel that, without forethought, lavishes the riches of the world and beings till they gain enlightenment. It is perceived by those who are beyond conceptual construction. So number 17 is about the Dharmakaya. So stanza 17, the tinder of phenomena is all consumed, and this is peace. The Dharmakaya of the conquerors, there is no origin and no cessation. The mind is stopped. Kaya manifests. This speaks of Dharmakaya. Next is the enjoyment body. This peaceful kaya, radiant like the wish-fulfilling tree, is like the wishing jewel that, without forethought, lavishes the riches of the world on beings till they gain enlightenment. It is perceived by those who are beyond conceptual construction. So that's dealing with the enjoyment body. And then now we're talking about a causally concordant bodies, and how the Buddhists display all activities within a single pore of the body. How the Buddha's activities are displayed at that very site, and how he or she has attained perfect mastery over intention. So that's what we're going to get into now. Let me see. The Buddhists can display at once with a single Rubokaya, that's the form body, Rubokaya, in concord with its causes, the births, abiding, and cessation of their previous lives in effortless display, revealing them in clear and unimpaired distinction. Rubokaya's form. The Buddha, so not emanation. I got to check that. I don't know that Sanskrit for sure. The Buddha fields, the Buddhas dwelling there, their bodies, actions, strengths, and powers. How were the Shravakas? How great their throng, and how the Bodhisattvas they can reveal. They can display the Dharma that they taught, and how they were, and what they studied, what the works were that they did, the kind and quantity of offerings that they made. All this within their bodies they can clearly show. Their discipline as well, their patience, effort, concentration, wisdom, how they practiced them in earlier times without omission and clearest detail. All this they show within a single pore. And they can show how all the Buddhas of the past and those come and those appearing now throughout the depths of space set forth the Dharma with a clear and ringing voice, and how they live within the world and free all wandering beings from their pain. So the form body has the emanation, has the enjoyment body and the emanation body, right? So it's from this comes that, from that comes this. So that's where we'll stop. Maybe we have some questions or something. We had a great opportunity. Rinpoche had an hour Zoom meeting with Venerable Thupten Chodron last week. It was great for them to see each other. Venerable Chodron, Rinpoche, the Jaton. So it was nice to hear that there are currently 12 fully ordained nuns at the Abbey. There are 5 probationary nuns. So when we look at the individual liberation vows, there's the male and female one-day vow. There's the novice monk and nun vow. And then there's it's a probationary nun vow. It's an extra vow. And then there's the fully ordained monk and fully ordained nuns vows. So what they do at the Abbey is they give the novice and probationary vows simultaneously in the same day. And then so they have nuns that are abiding in the probationary vow, and then they wait 2 years, and then they go take the full ordination in Taiwan. So really beautiful program going on there. And then there's one Gelung, one fully ordained monk there. So there's a total of 18 ordained people. So it fits the quality of having 4 fully ordained people in one area. So we can say that the Vinaya is present because they're doing all of the necessary rituals in order to keep the Vinaya pure, the Sojong and the Arne and so forth. So there's three. Maybe Lobsang could explain it more because he knows the program and curriculum there much more clearly than I. But it was wonderful to hear, and Rinpoche was glad to hear that the Venerable Chodron's also working with His Holiness. You probably all know this. I'm so out of the loop, by the way. She's, she says, oh, you know the project I'm working on. I was like, oh, I didn't. I guess that she and the Dalai Lama are working on 11 books. 6 of them are out, and they're Tibetan library. I don't want to say the wrong name. It's Venerable Chodron and His Holiness, and they're trying to go a little bit deeper into philosophy than the outer material, but use language that's more comfortable. So people like ordinary folk who want to go further than the stuff we always hear, right? Maybe it depends on who your teacher is, I feel. But like, if you want more, go a little deeper, right? I guess that there's a lot. I haven't read any of it. So this is the idea is to make it more palatable, more easy to get into those deeper concepts. So this whole series, the point of the whole series. So yeah, we got to have a great talk, and yeah, it was wonderful. So Rinpoche is connecting with a lot of people. He's on the phone every single day now with Tibet. He's on the phone all the time with India now. He's really plugged in, and enjoying that. Yeah. The Venerable Chodron was Rinpoche's student in India. When he taught at Namgyal in India, and she, I think, was ordained in 77 or something like that. Check that, I could be wrong, just check and make sure. But she's been ordained, like, I was born in 72, so when I think of that, that's kind of mind-blowing, right? And she's really kept those pure ethics and made an effort to try to make the Dharma in the United States, first of all, here, right? But better, like, make it so that more people will want to be Buddhist. And I really applaud that. And I also applaud something that she said, and I just wanted to say amen. She said that they are very particular about who is ordained. And they make sure that people are very prepared to be ordained. And that they are not in any way thinking they're going to like go work and maybe grow their hair out, but then be ordained, but not be ordained. She wants to build a monastic community based on the Vinaya, the way that the Buddha intended it, and has very strict requirements and prerequisites for one to engage in that program. And I think that we're going to see programs like that, because I don't know what goes on in the United States. I don't want to say this is the only one. I don't know anything, right? But programs like that are our only hope for having monasteries and the Dharma, right, as an institution in the United States that isn't kind of like strange and new, even though it's older, right? Right? So I just really applaud that idea of, I asked, why can't, you have enough nuns here now, why can't you just have people ordained here? Why do you have to go now to Taiwan? You have 10 fully ordained nuns. Bring some monks, or I don't know what the numbers are, but you have that. She really doesn't want it to become a place where people just go get ordained. She wants it to be a major process of self-reflection that a person goes through to know if they want to definitely emerge, rapjung, right? To get out, if they want to, take that step of emerging, of renunciate, a renunciate life, of wanting, to renounce cyclic existence. And I was just so happy to hear and so refreshed to hear that. And she was funny. She's like, I've kind of become like, because she's not conservative at all. She's like, I guess I've kind of become conservative in this respect. And it was very, very refreshing to hear, because it's one of my very, very big fears in the United States is that it's very loose, right? And we're very loose, and we think it's good to be loose, and like we don't think we need structure. And it's really, the Lam Rim is only structure, right? structuring our mind, structuring our mind. And it says, before we even get into meditation in the Lam Rim, right? Like if you look at the part where it gets into like meditating on leisure opportunity and like how you think about these things, it says that you can't have dullness and laxity, even though this is an analysis you're doing. You need to have like a focus single pointedly on these topics. You know, it's something you've got to hone in on and think about death, think about leisure, think about opportunity. It's not something that, yeah, opportunity, I'll have a Big Mac. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, maybe I should go out with my friend. It's something you're focusing in on. So you're honing in those skills of single-pointed concentration in the Lam Rim Chemo well before you get into any conversation about how to do that. So you see, even at our level, how we really need to be mindful and try to like start to compartmentalize some of these practices and put them in an order so they actually work, and just like get our distracted mind a little bit harnessed in, right? So questions?
Linda or Lobsang?
Oh, hi, it's Melinda. So this is about the teaching from today. So I just wondered, are the different grounds the bodhisattvas are on conceptual or non-conceptual, or a mixture?
A mixture. Rinpoche, the Shanchu Sembi Sa. Dopa Yimba Dama Yimba Yurube. Yeah, so there's both conceptual and non-conceptual. They see emptiness directly through various points in those stages again and again and again. Those, because they're not Buddhists yet and can't conceive simo things, right? During those points, they're having non-conceptual direct perceptions of emptiness, right? But when they come out of that, they're in conceptuality again.
Okay.
And there are probably other non-conceptual things, but I'm using the example of their emptiness realization, right? So they're both conceptual and non-conceptual. Rinpoche, the Shanchu Rinpoche, Shanchu Semba, Rinpoche, the coffee this time. Coffee this time. So I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, real quick, while Rinpoche has some coffee. So we say, it says in the Lam Rim Chemo, right, that in order to have the human basis, the full human basis with leisure and opportunity, you have to have all these practices of ethics, the 6 perfections, and the stainless prayer, right? We see this in the Lam Rim Chemo. You can check it. It's there. Can a being of small or medium capacity have a rebirth with the leisures and opportunities? If so, how? If they haven't practiced the 6 perfections. And if they can't, how is nirvana tenable? Can you achieve nirvana then without leisure and opportunity? Anyway, it's a very, very kind of subtle point, but it's something. I went back through the Lam Rim and I was just thinking, like, wait a second, wait. So Rinpoche said, well, I did it with the medium scope. Like I did this whole debate where I just posited they can't achieve enlightenment, right, or nirvana with him. And he said, well, they have practice of the 6 perfections, like maybe similar to it. So it's something he said is a great debate, though. So there's something meaty in there that to look at. So I just wanted to throw that out to everybody, unrelated, because that's what I've got on my mind these days. And, you know, like we say, oh, the small scope is to get out of the lower realms and, you know, to achieve a human rebirth. But can you, like, what do you really need to do to achieve a human rebirth that's worthwhile, right? That has all of these circumstances where you don't have this wrong view and Buddha's words here, and you're not a hell being, you're not a hungry ghost, and, you know, all these different things. You're not a long life deity, all these things, right, that we know are in the Lam Rim. Like, can you have all of those qualities without practicing the Mahayana? And if not, how do you hit nirvana? And if you say that the Hinayanist practices the six perfections, it's called Prajnaparamita, and it's a Mahayana teaching. So anyway, that's my question for everybody to absorb for the week. Lori told me not to bring it up, but I did. So Rinpoche, the Shanchu Semba, Sa Tambo, Nipa, Somba, Jipa, Kon, Toni Dopi Shera, Yurbe, Ton, Yurbe, the Dopa Dan Drelshi Madrawa, Ripa, Yurbe, Dopa Dan Madrawa, then Gatsi Yurbe, Yanje, Tomani Tondu, Tem Mambo, the Dopa Mayimba, Mitapa, Kon Yurbe. Okay, so yes, the Bodhisattva through these stages has many experiences of seeing emptiness. Seeing emptiness directly is non-conceptual, and also has non-conceptual realizations of other topics such as impermanence and conceptual. Is Lobsang there?
Yes, Lobsang Long is there.
How are you feeling about this? Can someone in the small or medium scope
Here debate that, yeah.
be born with the leisure and opportunity?
I mean, yeah. I mean, Rinpoche, and his answer, it makes sense, right? Like you can say, of course, there's something that's we can say is a practice of the six perfections. It's not the practice in the way a Mahayana would do it, where it's imbued with, the wisdom of emptiness and bodhicitta. So that would be a distinction between the way a Mahayana practitioner versus a fundamental vehicle or a Pali, tradition practitioner would do it. But of course, every Buddhist tradition has the practice of generosity, ethical conduct, patience, perseverance, concentration, wisdom. That's included within the three higher trainings already, right? So of course they have the three higher trainings. So, and the other way you could look at it is that you could say, well, okay, they're not practicing the six. I mean, you could just kind of say, okay, fine, we'll let that side go. They're not having the practice of the six perfections, but that requirement for the precious human life of the practice of the six perfections, that's in the context of a super precious human life for a Mahayana practitioner. An ordinary precious human life for just the other Buddhists, the non-Mahayana practitioners, doesn't need, doesn't need bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness. So they just do the three highest higher trainings, and of course accumulate a lot of virtue and the prayers to be born as a human with the conditions necessary to achieve the liberation of the hearers and the solitary realizers.
But leisure and opportunity doesn't infer Mahayana rebirth.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, in that you could say, well, in the context of the Lam Rim, that's what they're referring to when they say that it requires the six perfections, if you want to let that side go. Or you can let the side go that the six perfections absolutely have to be Mahayana six perfections. You could let that side go and say, well, they have a practice of the six perfections too, because of course they're practicing generosity and so forth. They're practicing all 6 or 10 even of those, right? They're just not practicing it with bodhicitta as the motivation, right?
So Hinayanists have bodhisattvas.
No, that wouldn't be the conclusion.
So
They have a practice of the
Hinayanist
six perfections, which is a non-bodhisattva version of the six perfections.
show the practice of the six perfections, where it starts.
The practice of generosity in the continuum of a hearer arhat.
But wouldn't the practice of the six perfections begin at the path of accumulation when they go from Musen to Jusen?
No, we also have the practice of the six perfections without bodhicitta. Everyone here.
Is it okay? So that's where I'll end. We have actually company coming, but we don't always have to conclude with like, whoa, that's it, right? But I love this discussion. I've never ever had a doubt, right? Like before. And then I was reading and I was like, wait a second, like, you know, I thought I just wanted to bring that up. So yeah. Do we have any other questions? We do have company coming. So but I want to get through questions. And if I keep talking, we won't get through questions. Thank you, Lobsang La.
There's no other questions, but Terry Flynn last week had a question that we didn't get to.
Oh, let's do that.
I'm not sure if Terry's mic is working, but Terry, if you want to ask a question, you can chat it in.
The teme shintu yoata. Then the teme. Then so Rinpoche says this that then okay, we're tabling it. Go ahead. Terry, go ahead.
We're putting you on the spot, Terry. If he hasn't expressed that he wants to ask the question today, but I just wanted to give him the opportunity since we didn't ask it last week. We caught
I agree.
it right when it was his turn.
I felt so bad, like a lot about that, actually.
So, oh, here.
Okay.
Do you see it? I can read it if you don't see it, Jeff.
I just wanted other examples of the informed that I can compare to consciousness. The informed. What do you mean by the unformed? Unformed. I see. Uncompounded. Is that what we mean by unformed?
Yeah.
I don't think we'd have anything unformed that's consciousness, because consciousness isn't impermanent. It's necessarily compound. Cessation in the mind of a Buddha is permanent, but that's not consciousness. Maybe is that, am I interpreting the word correctly? Like, hold on, I see some chat. Of the unformed that I can compare to consciousness. Yeah, that's all. I'm going to do the concluding prayers, right? And then if there's more at the tail end, then I can just clarify it, or does that sound reasonable? Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Lobsang La. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Mantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Jatsu, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Suji Rimchikuti Shapi Denona. Thank you, everyone. Oh, here we go. If it said consciousness is unformed, non-born, it was talking about that it is not intrinsically formed. It doesn't have an inherent existence of formation, a singularity or multiplicity. So I think that that's what was talking about in that case, is that consciousness is not inherently existently arisen or formed. Consciousness comes into being through a series of causes and conditions and so forth in order to be formed. It isn't formed inherently. So it's like when we say it doesn't exist, but we mean it doesn't inherently exist. I think in this case, it means it isn't inherently formed because of it dependently originates. But if that isn't the case, then I apologize. But I believe that that is what consciousness in this case being the thing that karma drives from life to life. Yeah, exactly. Consciousness itself is not intrinsically existently formed. It doesn't, its formation is not inherently existent. Its parts aren't inherently existent. It's not inherently existent. Its previous moment isn't inherently existent. And we look at all of those things when we look at consciousness, right? In order for us to posit this moment's consciousness, we have to see that it dependently originated. In order for us to say this moment, we have to say that it's not the previous moment, right? So it's dependent upon its position, right? So we're naming it depending on its position, this moment, because it's not the future moment, it's not the previous moment. So we're seeing that the consciousness itself is dependent upon various causes and conditions and factors to come together that serve as a collection that then we name consciousness. But there is not any arising of consciousness that inherently exists. There is not any abiding of consciousness that inherently exists, or destruction of consciousness that inherently exists, because consciousness dependently originates, and if it dependently originates, it doesn't inherently arise, abide, or disintegrate. So I think that that's what it's referring to. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you at the center next Sunday, right? Is that the 3rd? Yeah. Oh, everybody don't forget, next Sunday, 10 a.m., Rinpoche is giving the blessing of Vajraparni, Haryagriva, and Garuda. It's a blessing to remove obstacles. Again, it's not something we're going to get into a lot of details about. I actually spoke with Geshe Nima about this initiation, and I said, yeah, I don't really know anything about this. And he said, this is the kind of initiation we as Tibetans just have faith in these deities, and we have faith that this process helps to remove obstacles. So that's, you know, for a native speaker who is a Geshe, say that we should give ourselves just a little slack and look at it as a blessing. And, you know, if we want to delve further in our own studies, I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying that we aren't going to do that on Sunday. So it will be a blessing. Thank you, everybody. See you then.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, Jeff. Bye-bye, everyone.